Andrew Klavan, and this is Another Kingdom. Be sure to head over to dailywire.com and become a subscriber to get early access to our episodes ad-free. In our last episode, Austin met a cursed magician named Natani and learned how he transformed his lover, Maud, into a mutant rodent woman so that she could escape the clutches of Curtin after the evil wizard took over Edgemont. But with the wizard hunting him through a lightning storm, Austin was forced to escape to a mysterious house in the woods run by a beautiful woman named Hamarta. As he stepped through the door, he was sent back to California, where he went to his parents' house in Berkeley. There, he found that Riley had left him a clue to her whereabouts, an old horror DVD called Horror Mansion, with a phone number written on it. While he was searching for it, though, his own mother called two of Orozco's assassins to come and get him. We left Austin trying to choose between returning to the mansion in Edgemont or facing the killer he calls Slick and his muscle man sidekick. And now episode 5 of Another Kingdom, performed by Michael Knowles.
"Well, you made very good time," I heard my mother say. She sounded as if she were greeting a dinner guest instead of the assassin sent to slaughter her son. And it wrung my heart to hear her. It did. I felt as if I were swirling into the center of a vortex, a tumult of memories and associations spinning around me. I searched the mind chaos for some moment to hold on to, some instance in my past of maternal warmth or comfort, something that would make me disbelieve what I was hearing with my own ears. But I couldn't find one. Not one. How had I hidden this from myself so long? How had I never known what my mother was, what my youth was, my life was? How could I be so surprised at what was happening now? I heard Slick answer her. "Where is the lad?" A smooth, confident voice. A voice like the look of the man. "Upstairs, I think," my mother said. "I know he hasn't gone out. His car is still in the drive. Anyway, I would have heard him." I stood where I was, still frozen, Hamarta still waiting for me through the veil of transition, waiting and smiling that possibly malevolent smile, while the killer stood at the kitchen door and my mother, betrayed me to him. "Okay, Mrs. Lively," said Slick. "Doctor," she corrected him. "Dr. Fleischer Lively, actually." "Doctor, right. Maybe you ought to go someplace quiet until this is over, ma'am." "Yes," said my mother thoughtfully. "But you won't do anything that will disturb my husband, will you? He's very distraught. Austin is our son, remember." "Oh, sure, I understand," said Slick. I could almost hear him grinning, an "I understand" grin. "Nothing bad's going to happen here." "Of course. Well, if you'll excuse me, I'll just... Yeah, you go back to what you were doing. My colleague and I will be gone before you know it." I heard the kitchen door close. Slick was inside the house. And still I stood there, between the two worlds. Edgemont and its dangers were crowding in on my reeling consciousness now. The storm in the forest, the heavy atmosphere of evil, my sense that the wizard Curtin was rushing to the scene to destroy me, my growing suspicion that Hamarta was luring me into Curtin's trap. It all came back to me. And at the same time, footsteps. Slick. His colleague. If they found me, I would vanish without a trace, without even a mother's tears to mark my passing. I stepped through the mudroom door. My life had become so full of bizarre moments. I don't know where to place this one in the bizarre scheme of things, but it was bizarre all right. For a second, I was halfway through the door of the forest mansion. The savage and somehow malicious wind was making the whole tree line sway violently, back and forth, like weeds in a rising sea. Forked lightning snapped across the sky like a dragon's tongue. Then, the next second, I was in the foyer of the house and the door shut heavily behind me. With that, the raging storm outside was silent, completely silent. The tumult in the air was utterly gone. It seemed this house was so thoroughly sealed that no sound from the outside world could get into it, not even a whisper. I could see the rain streaking the windows, and I could see the wind lashing the rain, but the noise of it did not reach me. Instead, I found myself in a warm and lavish entranceway leading out past a grand staircase into a majestic front hall. I gaped, bewildered and disoriented. Not only had I just transitioned from one world into another, I had simultaneously transitioned from being a man with a relatively normal, screwed-up childhood to a man who had grown up in the pulsing belly of homicidal darkness. Horror mansion indeed. Blinking through my shock, I turned to face Marta. There was, I saw now, nothing sinister in her smile. Nothing at all. I must have imagined it. It was the same warm, wifely, almost maternal smile that had drawn me to her in the first place. I'll take care of you. I'll feed you. Sweetheart. I was getting paranoid, that's all. She beckoned me. "Well, come on, darling," she said. "Aren't you hungry?" I was. I hadn't eaten anything since the cheese sandwich in Berkeley the night before. Hard to keep track of these things, with the times and places always shifting back and forth. But yes, as sorrowful as I was, as shattered as I was by my mother's murderous betrayal, I was hungry too. So I walked with Hamarta down the long hall. And it was a wondrous hall now that I saw it up close. The gold and purple runner on the floor was lit by lofty candelabras standing on finely crafted brass stands. The ceiling was high, high above me, vaulted and hung with magnificent chandeliers. The walls were decorated with painted portraits, a smooth-faced knight resting his hand on his sword hilt, an impish woman in an elfin jerkin standing legs akimbo beneath some trees, a great black-bearded brute with a bar of iron in his hand. They watched me pass with baleful glazes, as if they were sorry to see me go. Then Hamarta said to me, "This way, sweetheart," and I faced her and followed her around a corner. There was another long hall with two huge carved wooden doors standing at the end of it. Hamarta looked up at me as we walked toward them. "Are you all right?" she said with sweet concern. "You seem upset." "Well, my mother just sent a killer after me, and there's a wizard riding on the wind to destroy me, and I don't know what this place is or what I'm doing here, or even who I am really, who I ever was. So yeah, I guess I'm a little upset," was what I didn't say. What I did say was, "Upset? No, I'm fine." She narrowed her eyes and her lips quirked, and she said, as if she didn't believe me. She took my arm and pressed against me so I could feel the soft side of her breast and smell the clean incense of her hair. "Well, whatever's bothering you, it's going to be all right now, I promise. This is a place for you to rest and forget your troubles and grow strong again. You need someone to take care of you, Austin, that's all." I did. It was true. I did need someone to take care of me, and a place to rest and sort out my thoughts and throw off this sorrow and grow steady and strong again. I needed all that, and I needed the feel of her softness against me and the smell of her hair. But how did she know my name? Had I told her? I couldn't remember. But she really did feel soft. We continued along the hall together. "Isn't it nicer in here than it was outside?" she asked me in a gently teasing tone. "Warm, not cold. Dry, not wet. Safe, not dangerous. Aren't things a little better already? Just a little? No?" She sounded like a mother trying to coax a smile from a sulky child. We went on walking, which was strange. I would have thought we would have reached those big double doors by now, but they were still a long way off. "I wish you would confide in me," she said, still teasing, coaxing. "Tell me your troubles. Let me make them better." I know I should have seen the danger. I think I did see it in one part of my brain. But I was so sad about what had happened at home, and I had been so alone these last days, without even an email or a media post or a voice on the phone. And the smell of her hair, and the softness of her breast, and the kindness of her voice, they lulled me. "It's hard to explain," I told her. "I'm trying to find my way across the 11 lands, I know. Everyone who comes to this house is on some silly quest or other, fretting about it, worried, troubled, their foreheads all like this," she said, And she looked up at me and wrinkled her forehead and made a funny expression. Then she laughed. "What do you mean, everyone?" I asked her. I was glancing down at her as I asked, down at her face, and I thought I saw something, a movement, as if her skin had rippled unnaturally. But it was over in a second, less than a second. I studied her closely, but I didn't see the movement again. "People will literally kill themselves with these quests, they really will," she went on. "They'll fret and worry themselves right into the grave, which makes absolutely no sense when you think about it. What do you have if you don't have your life? Nothing. Nothing at all. So what on earth could be worth dying for? It makes no sense." In the depths of my dejection, I barely understood what she was saying. I just liked the sound of her voice and the touch of her, and I was glad to be inside out of the storm. She looked up at me again, up from under her lashes. How beautiful she was. Even in my sadness, I found her incredibly alluring. "Now I'm sure your quest is very, very important," she said in that teasing tone. "But I think it can wait at least until the storm is over, don't you?" I opened my mouth to answer, but I didn't answer because my thoughts were all jumbled. I didn't want to go out in that storm again, that was for sure. But then, wasn't the storm bringing the wizard? Shouldn't I be out there running away from him as fast as I could? I lifted my gaze from her and looked down the hall at the doors, still so far away. Why were they still so far? It was confusing. I glanced back down at Hamarta to ask her about it, and I caught that movement again, a ripple on one part of her face. Again, it was gone in a moment and her skin was normal. At the same time, for a second, I thought I caught a smell coming off her, or the faint suggestion of a smell. Unpleasant, like food gone bad. Had I done the right thing following her in here? "Well, what choice did you have?" she asked me. "What?" I said, startled. Was she reading my thoughts now? Or had I spoken the thought aloud? I wasn't sure. "You have to rest at some point, sweetheart. You can't just keep questing forever. You have to rest. You have to. This place, this house. Think of it like an inn. A warm, welcoming inn along the road. A home away from home." The words stirred up my anguish, and I blurted out to her, "I have no home, Hamarta." Then, suddenly, we were at the end of the hall. The huge double doors were towering over us. Gargoyles, carved into the medallions on their panels, peered down at us. They looked like they were going to drool on our heads from their wide-open, fangy mouths. I stopped, and Hamarta stopped with me. I glanced from the gargoyles to her. And this time I was certain of it. The skin of her face rippled as if something was crawling underneath it. The sight made me grimace with disgust. Hamarta only smiled, that sweet, sweet smile. She opened her mouth to speak, and a beetle crawled out over her lips, scrambled down her chin, dropped to the runner, and skittered away. As I stared, my gorge rising, another bug tumbled out from beneath her hairline. It likewise fell to the floor. "What the hell?" I whispered. But at that, there was a resounding rush of air, and the double doors swung in and opened with a crash. Reflexively, I started and turned to look. We were standing on the brink of a gigantic dining hall, a place alive with voices and aromas and activity. And when I say gigantic, I mean vast, so vast. I couldn't help but stand and stare at it, amazed. There was a great wooden dining table in the center of the room. It seemed to go on forever until it faded into a shadowy distance. The fireplaces on either side of it seemed as tall as airplane hangars, and the flames in them were crackling, dancing, sparking as they devoured logs the size of trees. Enormous chandeliers hung over the table at intervals, and the flames from their candles and the flames from the hearths lit a scene of fabulous celebration. Men and women in fanciful medieval clothing sat in heavy oaken chairs. The bright blues and reds and greens of their outfits and gowns seemed to light the room as brightly as the flames did. They were eating with gusto, dishing food from the bowls and carving boards laid out before them, fowl and beef and pork and large cooked vegetables and mashed potatoes. They were downing mugs of ale and laughing and talking, the women touching the men's arms and batting their lashes at them, the men showing off their fine white teeth in appreciative smiles. And the smells were warm and rich and wonderful. They made my stomach growl and my mouth water. And the noise that rushed out at me like traffic was so full of jolliness that, for a second, my own dejection lifted, and I felt a powerful desire to forget my troubles and join the party. The storm-swept scene through the gigantic windows to my left and right, the trees swaying, the lightning flashing, the rain slanting in a steady downpour out of the boiling black clouds above, only made the indoor fires seem warmer, the smells more delicious, the fellowship all the more fine. Confused, I looked back at Hamarta. But Hamarta was gone. Totally gone. Looking down at the place where she had stood beside me, I saw nothing but a large cluster of beetles and roaches and worms scrambling and squiggling off the runner to disappear under the baseboards of the wall. I felt that rise of disgust in my throat again. But the next second, the bugs too were gone, as if they had never been there. I hesitated. I didn't know what to do. That is, I did know. It seemed obvious I ought to get out of there, get out now, right away. This had to be some mental trick of Curtin's, didn't it? Yes, it had to be. But somehow, I don't know. I just couldn't think about leaving anymore. The storm was so strong, and my life was so miserable, and the smells and the sounds of gaiety coming out of the dining room were so appealing. And when I looked at the hallway behind me, it seemed like such a long way back to the front door. I felt reckless, indifferent to consequences. I thought, what the hell, and took one step across the threshold. I thought, I can always go back. A man's got to eat, hasn't he? And then the great double doors slammed shut, and somehow I understood the thing had been decided. I drifted deeper into the room in a gormless haze. A serving girl took hold of my arm. She was wearing a simple brown dress that showed off her wonderful cleavage. With a bright smile and flashing eyes, she tossed her lavish raven hair and led me to the table.
If you'd like to keep watching these great visuals throughout the whole episode and get each episode a full week ahead of everyone else, become a Daily Wire Premium subscriber. You'll get a new chapter every Monday, while the rest of you will have to wait till Friday to find out what happens on Austin's quest. Don't wait till Friday. Subscribe now. As a premium subscriber, you'll be able to watch live episodes of The Ben Shapiro Show, The Michael Knowles Show, The Matt Walsh Show, and me on The Andrew Klavan Show. Read dailywire.com without ads, download our latest ebooks, interact with hosts by writing into the mailbag. It's all ad-free. To continue enjoying these rich visuals and riveting story, you guessed it, become a subscriber over at Daily Wire.